Hi everybody, we're going to really quick today go over the phase change ladder. I want you to keep this in mind whenever you're thinking about the water cycle, and ultimately try and connect this to the readings we've talked about, and the labs that we've done, and how the introduction and the taking away of energy can help matter exist in those three different phases. Okay, so it works like this. The very bottom, that's your least amount of energy, so that means it's cold down on the bottom, and it's the hottest up on top. Okay, so as you are going from bottom up, you are adding energy. And as you go from the top down to the bottom, you are subtracting energy. And to kind of give you some connection here, the energy, that the way that we measure energy is through a thermometer. So a thermometer, when you're taking the temperature of something, that's you measuring how much heat energy that item has. Okay. So again, bottom is cold, very little energy, and the higher you go up, the hotter it gets, the more energy it's gaining. And again, that thermometer is the tool that we use to measure heat energy. All right. So if you think about it, we're going to use water because that's what we're studying, the water cycle. So at the very, very bottom, the coldest phase that water exists in is ice. Okay, so I'm going to draw some ice cubes. Right, and ice cubes are cold, which means they have very little heat energy, and they are all the way down on the bottom. Okay, so this is a solid. Okay, and the way to get here is you have to freeze. Okay. Now, if I want to go from the solid up, I'm going to have to add heat energy. What am I going to have to do to that ice? Well, it's the same thing that happens to your popsicle while you're sitting outside on a nice hot day. All that heat energy from the air around you melts that solid into, unfortunately, that liquid. And if it's a popsicle or ice cream, it's usually all over your hand or all over the sidewalk. So then it becomes a liquid. Okay. Now, if I were to take that liquid, and if it's water, and you put it into a pot or a pan and you put it on the stove, you're putting it right on top of fire. So as you're adding more and more heat energy, it has to get to a certain temperature. That temperature is 100 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. We call that boiling, right? So if it's 209 degrees, it's going to stay a liquid. You have to hit that temperature for it to turn into a gas. Okay, so again, we're adding more energy, and when you do that, liquid to a gas, that's called evaporation. It evaporates. Okay, and so here's the thing. When you think about water in its cycle, gaseous water is invisible. Okay, so the liquid form of water you can see, the ice form of water you can see, the gaseous state of water you cannot see, it's invisible. Okay, so when you get into talking about clouds and whether clouds are a gas or a liquid, the droplets that make up a cloud are a liquid. All right, so vapor, water vapor, and gas, the gaseous state of water, are invisible. So we'll talk about why we can see clouds in a little bit, but right now I want you to just know that the gaseous state of water is invisible. Okay, so it's really hard to draw that, so at least I'll draw a little pot on the stove, and then I'll just give you some indicators that it's evaporating because it's really hot. We've added all that energy, and now it's actually evaporating up into the space above that pot. Okay. Now, eventually what's going to happen is that water is moving so far away from this hot fire down here, and it hits other air that's floating around the room. It loses that energy. Heat always goes from the hotter thing to the colder thing, right? If you're holding, I don't know, like a snowball, the heat from your hand is going to go into that snowball. Makes your hand cold, right? If you were on the flip side to hold this hot pot on your hand, that heat energy is going to go from the hot pot into your hand, and it hurts, right? So you're gaining all that energy. The nerves in your hand are telling you, hey, you should probably put that down. And in this case, where this vapor is hitting the cooler air, it's going to lose energy. And as it loses energy, it goes from the gas to a liquid. And we call that condensation or condensate. Okay? And this is partly why you can see clouds in the sky. Those vapors, the gaseous state of water, is losing energy because when you get further and further up, it gets cooler and cooler. There's a weird layer that gets really warm, but for the most part, the water up in the atmosphere, as it moves further away from the surface, it gets colder. And as it does that, it loses that energy, and it starts to condense back into a liquid. And as it's floating around in that cloud, it's condensing more and more, and it's gathering more and more water droplets. And then we get into the water cycle where it precipitates. It falls from the sky, whether it's snow, sleet, ice, or even just rain. That's precipitation. But here's the phase change ladder. And again, I want you to just kind of understand, as you move up, you're adding energy. And as you move down, you're taking away, you're losing energy. And as you do that, at certain temperatures for different matter, it will change from a gas to a liquid to a solid. Thanks for watching, everybody.